Chosen ones, good evening. My name is Zeus the Prophet, and not even the force of Mother Nature can stop it. But I can. Before we begin tonight, I want to take a moment to say a little prayer and bless this movement. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing me to see another week. I come before you with gratitude and humility, thanking you for bringing us all together in this moment under your protection and your truth. Lord Jesus, I ask you to guide this conversation, soften our hearts, and clear our minds, letting every word spoken here be honest, balanced, and led with wisdom. May this conversation uplift those who are listening, bringing in healing where it's needed, and plant the seeds of hope, truth, and God-given assignment. We invite your presence into this space, Lord Jesus, into our words and into our intentions. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Welcome back, family, to another episode of the Zeus Podcast. Real conversations, real journeys, and real truth. Tonight, I'm sitting with somebody I truly respect, a woman whose story carries a lot of heart and wisdom. Her name is Elena Di Fiore, also known as LED. She's a music brand consultant, an industry leader, a mother, and a woman who has navigated life with bravery, grace, and resilience. And that doesn't come from surviving alone. It comes from rising with sincere conviction. Tonight, we walk through her journey with honesty, faith, and depth. Elena, thank you for being on the podcast. Welcome to the Zeus Podcast, sis. How are you?
Thanks for having me on.
My
Well,
pleasure.
thank you. How are you?
Absolutely. I am so excited to be here with you tonight. I was so looking forward to this. I definitely wanted to start this conversation a little bit differently tonight by giving you your well-deserved flowers with honesty, integrity, and respect that you deserve for the road you've actually built and walked on, not just the highlights people see from the outside. There's a lot of unseen, behind-the-scenes work that you've created, sis. The long hours, the discernment, the emotional and financial responsibility, the moments where you chose principle over convenience. You built a career that spans media, branding, artist development, radio, music, journalism, public relations, artist management, podcasting, and motherhood. And you've navigated all this with clarity and integrity. You've stayed human in an industry that rewards the exact opposite. Ego over empathy, speed over substance. That doesn't happen by accident. But I wanted to take a moment, sis, and acknowledge you, Eleanor, for the wonderful human being that you are behind the work. And I know there's a lot of people out there that don't see the responsibility. The moments where you held the line, you stood firm on your beliefs, and it would have been definitely much easier not to. And you stayed true. And that in itself needs a space for us to, share with the world. That always, it's not rewarded. And I just wanted you to know that's definitely felt and appreciated tremendously by me and my audience. So before we get into titles or roles, I wanted to ask you this. When you hear your journey reflected back like that, what does it stir in you right now?
Makes me feel very emotional, Zeus. It really does. And thank you for, what you've shared. My goodness. I don't think it's often that we stop and we look back. I'm the sort of person that I can't move forward if I'm looking backwards all the time. But there's a lot there, isn't there? There's a lot that I've done. And what it stirs within me is feelings that, yes, I got through it. I got through it because there have been things along the way that I felt have slowed me down and pulled me back and tried to push me down. And I've just kept swimming through the current. But I don't feel like I'm completely through it. So I feel like it's a beautiful acknowledgement. And thank you for being so authentic and so so welcoming, because a lot of the podcasts that I've been on previously, they've been beautiful hosts, but the conversation tends to be quite superficial. It doesn't go deep. So, what does it stir for me? Feelings of,
My pleasure.
I can't quite articulate right now, but I'm sure that I will.
Well, that silence in itself speaks volumes. I'm sure everyone will understand where you're coming from as well. So with that in mind, sister, let's go back to the very beginning, because every real grounded leader has a starting point. So take me back to the beginning, Elena. Where were you born and raised, and what was your childhood like, really?
Really? Well, I was born in Adelaide. I'm a third generation Italian. So, everyone down my mum's bloodline was all born in Italy first. And then my dad's a little bit further back. Brought up to be what I would say was like a good Catholic Italian schoolgirl. Our upbringing was immersed in the Italian traditions because my grandparents initially lived 4 houses away from us. So, anytime you'd hear the back gate open, you knew it was Nonna coming over. And, at the time, I guess being a kid, it was like, oh, they're back again. But that's something that I had that a lot of people I know didn't have with their upbringing. I'm the eldest of two, and I guess a lot of the way that I navigated my childhood was, looking for role models and looking for those that I could feel safe and trust to understand that in many respects I didn't feel like I fit in or I belonged, given I loved and I continue to love the Italian heritage and the customs and the traditions. I still carry them today with my family. But there were other things that I guess now that I'm at this ripe older age, I can acknowledge as being, the fallout of generational trauma that carried through with my upbringing. And I'm still working through that now. So I went to school in Adelaide. I did my degree in Adelaide. I went to Adelaide University and I studied psychology and Italian under a social science degree. I did not want to go to university though. I wanted
No?
to,
Okay.
no, because all through my
Okay.
schooling, I worked. Like I was 13 when I started working at McDonald's. And by the time I was in year 12, I was working more hours than I was studying. In year 11, I skipped and did year 12 Italian in year 11, so that freed up some time in year 12. I was volunteering with St. Vinny's, helping with the providing opportunities for those that were underprivileged to receive meals and be taken out on day trips in the school holidays and things like that. I was also volunteering at the Science Centre in Adelaide, which I don't know if it still exists, and then working at McDonald's. So as you know, I went through year 12. It's true to say that I went to university because that was my mother's wish. First of the family to go to university was a big deal, but I didn't want to go. I wanted to go to Melbourne. I wanted to take a gap here, go to Melbourne. I had a lot of skills, find a job, work out what I wanted to do, because I much prefer to work with, I say my hands. At the time, I wanted to work more with typing, writing, more so than within the school framework. I found that the school was just so limiting. And if you didn't do what was expected of you, you couldn't go beyond it. You couldn't go above it. I don't know if that's changed.
No, I feel you on that one. It's the same reason why I'm homeschooling my kids at the moment. So I
Yeah,
feel you on that one
you
tremendously.
feel it. Yeah. So, but that wasn't a choice. I couldn't skip. Yeah, I couldn't take a gap year. No, I had to go to university, do what was expected of me. That first year, I failed half the year. I was so into the social party side of it, where I much preferred to be hanging out with my friends on the lawns or on the Popeye, having a beer. That was more,
right.
The social side was a lot of fun, but I didn't throw myself in wholeheartedly. At the end of that year, when I realized I had failed half the year, I'd passed half the year, Mum goes, well, what are you going to do? Well, if I start anything, I always have to finish it. So I just went back again
Fair
and
enough.
pushed forward. So I was always like 6 months behind with Italian. And, subjects like psychology with the numbers of that all came to me quite easily. But I was also working 3 jobs while I was at uni. I found ways to express myself, where I could in other ways that didn't require sitting and digesting something that wasn't really of interest to me, or maybe I didn't see it as practical application in the future.
I understand that. Thank you for sharing that. Your surname, Di Fiore, am I pronouncing it
Mm,
right?
correctly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It carries a lot of history and poetry. What do you know about your Italian roots, and how did that heritage shape your identity growing up?
My Italian roots are not connected to Di Fiore. Di Fiore is my family name through marriage. And so
Okay.
my maiden name was Cocchetti, which a lot of people said was confetti or cornetto, or they just came up with whatever I guess something I've learned along the way is I'm that person that needs to spell my name and my street and everything else. Like I don't have anything that's too simple.
I'm very
So
similar as well.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are. So my heritage comes from Reggio Calabria, so the south. Also Vieste, which is like very close to the heel of the boot of Italy, and then a bit further north of Rome. So the reality is the history, I guess, if you imagine like my grandparents on one side, came and started in Bonagilla, which is around the corner from where I am now, where my dad's father came 52 by boat after 30 days, landed in Port Melbourne, was put on a train, and then was then guided out and sort of dropped in the middle of a field. And then had to walk to Bonagilla, where there were 20 mini villages, if that's what I'd call them. I've been out to see the one that's still there. And it was all on the promise of if you came to Australia, you'd get a job, a better future. 9 months later, he was discharged and he moved to Adelaide, and that's where he met my grandmother, who was also Calabrese background. And then, my dad's family came about. My mum's family was different. My grandfather on my mum's side, he came out by himself. He was invited by cousins. He came out by himself. He left my grandmother in Italy, with my mum
Wow.
and my auntie. And after 12 months, then my grandmother, who I'm named after, got on the boat by herself with the girls and brought them to Australia. And again, I can't quite
Wow.
imagine what that would be like.
That's an amazing, amazing journey.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
last name, Di Fiore, literally means of the flower. It's
Yeah,
why
of flowers. Di is of and fiore is flowers. Yes, of flowers. I was saying that
this
to my
is why
son.
I titled tonight's podcast with that name. So when you hear the title of tonight's podcast, "What the Flower Endures," what does that stir in you personally in terms of what you've had to withstand, go through, and grow through, and still remain true to?
Yeah, look, I think it's fair to say that for me personally, I spent 22 years unmarried, and I've just celebrated 22 years of marriage. So, so far, half of my life was with one last
Amen.
name, and the other half is with this second one. And I guess the growth that has come within me has only come since I've been at Di Fiore. The challenges that I've faced these last 22 years have been tremendous, but with the right support and pulling within myself what I've learned through observations and what I have built as a foundation of values, I've been able to get through all different types of situations, some that have evolved in a career sense, others that have evolved in a family dynamic sense. There's been, as I said before, there's a lot of generational trauma that we're still working through. But, what I've endured as a person, it's to me as a multi-dimensional woman. It's not just me as Elena. It's not just me as a wife. It's just me as a mother, or as what I say as a solopreneur. There's a lot of different pathways I could take you down, but what I read from the title is that a flower can wilt, and this flower has not. It's continued to grow
Blossom.
and blossom. Yeah, yeah. So I appreciate you using that title.
No, that's. I wanted to make you feel more at home as well. I want you to feel comfortable doing this podcast
Yeah,
as well. I'm so honored for you to be here.
thank
What
you.
part of your childhood shaped you the most?
I would have to say it's the time that I spent with my grandparents on my mum's side. The
To me, talk to me about that.
yeah, we spent a lot of time with them, not just time with the Italian traditions like making the pasta sauce once a year and,
Right.
going to church and things like that, but also, my grandmother in particular, she was quite unwell when I was younger. So going to, hospital appointments and I guess what I learned and a lot of what shaped me is that thing of no matter what I'm going through, I always have space in my heart and my mind for others that need me as well. And so now that I'm a mum and I have my own children and my own family, I also look at what my grandparents taught me, and particularly my grandmother. She was my nonna Elena, she was very gentle and kind and generous and half mile height. So for someone that was not so tall of stature, she packed a punch, and it's quite funny that at the table, like if we were having lunch with them over a weekend, my grandfather, my nonna Michael, he'd say, Elena, because Elena is how, typically people would pronounce my name. And
Elena.
we
Okay.
would, Elena, yeah, we would both like turn around, and something else I learned, I guess, that comes with me today is that feeling of like not being heard. So, on the flip side, like you have this whole thing of the values and the love of a family and the traditions that were all binding. I got that from my nonna very much. But then the flip side was always fighting to voice my own thoughts, my own experiences, what I had to say, because, when nonna would say our name, we had the same name. So then she got a nickname.
Right.
And then, but still, like I talk a lot like her. Like I could talk the legs off the table and she could too.
Huh.
So imagine sitting with someone that talks as
I
much as me,
appreciate that.
Yeah, the
Of course.
journey.
So what was the emotional atmosphere of your home, especially your nonna's home? The values, the challenges, and the energy.
Yeah. I think the very, very beginning, I guess, if I think of when I was in a primary school, language was a challenge because I was learning correct Italian or fluent Italian at school. And I can remember being in year 4 and speaking with my nonno and I'm saying, I'm learning about this at school. And he's saying, that's not how you say it. Um, but
Right.
but over time, like because when they came to Australia, they immersed themselves with all Italian surroundings. So Italian friends and Italian doctors and Italian shops and the Italian community. So in some ways,
Everything pretty much Italian.
yeah, everything. And then there's 20 different regions, so you get a dialect of a region, which is some have said it sounds French. If you speak Barese, it sounds French, but I love it. I love the sound of it. And I do go and find there's a guy on Instagram who speaks a lot in the Barese dialect, and I watch him speak just because it brings back great memories. The energy around home, particularly with my grandmother, my nonna, is very protective. So
I
if there
understand
was
that.
ever a time when come on, you haven't, come and help sort of thing. She'd be like, no, but they're kids. And she'd hug us. She was just, yeah. But the thing was, she allowed us to be who we were as well. Never made us feel
Mhm.
bad for saying something that maybe she disagreed with but I lost her very young. I was 16 when she passed away,
My
which
condolences. Yeah.
thank you. It was a long time ago, but there's still times now where she pops up in my mind. Mum and dad worked a lot. What can I say? They worked a lot. My sister, 4 years younger than me, so I remember going to high school and then she came to the same school with me, and it was like me making sure that she could walk with me to the bus stop to get to school because they work. My
Right.
parents work shift work, so
I understand
you
that
know,
for sure. I mean,
yeah,
I was raised by a single mom myself, two older brothers, 4 or 5 years older than
yeah,
me, so I understand that perfectly.
yeah.
But what did that pain teach you about yourself?
Hmm. Are you referring to the pain of? I'm trying to work out where we're going with this, with the
Of
pain.
being unseen. You spoke
Being
about being
unseen.
unseen
Yeah,
before.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. It's something I still battle with now.
Mm.
And I find the older I get, um, you know, if I feel like I'm unseen, then I am not characteristically being myself. It kind of pushes me into I go into that fight or flight mode. I go into that, oh, it's a yucky type of energy. I don't like feeling unseen. But, the world has changed a lot. The world, like with you, I don't feel
Absolutely.
unseen, right? With the conversations we have, I don't feel unseen. You would know if I felt unseen. I
Absolutely.
push back. I push back a lot. And I guess, yeah,
I
yeah,
understand that perfectly. Right.
yeah.
For anyone
And so
who's
what I've had
listening,
to do,
that's
yeah.
what, yeah, go ahead.
No, what I've had to do is put some boundaries in place so that where I am feeling unseen, like I've been on Do Not Disturb on my phone since April this year. That's like 8 months. And I choose the energies that can come through and can cut through that boundary because their energy is welcome. I've had to think really long and hard. And I know like December now I read it was great as a month for December being decluttering, detoxing, deleting. We're going to go into a new year, new energy. What do I want to bring with myself
Absolutely.
into the new year? So it's a real reflective time that we're having this chat on here because, yeah, feeling unseen is something I still feel, but you have to put coping strategies in place to
Absolutely.
remind myself, is it important that this person doesn't see me? Absolutely not. But the ones who do see me, then, yeah.
Yeah. So as I was going to say before, for anyone who's listening tonight, that's what quiet resilience actually means. What it looks like. So was there a season where you felt respected for your output growing up, but misunderstood for your depths?
Yeah, that's a big one. I think I was only really seen honestly, on those big days, like year 12 graduation, uni graduation, um, you know, building my first house. It's like buying my first block of land, pat, pat, pat. Because that's traditional success in the climate that I was brought up in. It was all about success is a piece of paper that says, you have achieved, a certification, an accomplishment that is
Quotation marks.
going to bring money. To me, it was always telling towards success of, if you're bringing in money, then you're successful. So finishing school, meaning you have a better chance to then get a better job, that you better chance to make money, buying the block of land and then building a house before I got married. I was 22 when my house was built. It's having a mortgage from 19, all that stuff is like, good on you. You have debt. But that is a sign of
Right.
you're then going to build your wealth. And because you're going to build your wealth, that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a different way
I
of
want to,
thinking now, isn't it? I mean, for me, I don't see money as a way of, if I look at what a wealthy life would be for me, it's not about how much money I have in the bank. It's not about the brands that I'm wearing. Wealth for me is about the organic relationships I've harnessed throughout my life where I can learn from others and I can, you know, in a very profound way say that I have friends and connections that I share this life with where we are there for the positive and the challenging, and that for me is what wealth is. It's
yeah,
about connection,
absolutely. I think there's
not
been
how
a lot
much,
of misconception. Mm.
Yeah,
There's been a lot of
there's a
connection,
lot.
a lot of miscommunication about what success really is. I talk to a lot of people, and they're like you said, the definition of wealth is you having a lot of money in the bank, having nice cars, having flashy clothes, having all these pretentious people around you. But person asks me, what is the definition of wealth? I also tell them, it's about, do you have a family that loves you? Do you have food in the fridge? You have clothes on your back? You have a roof over your head. Are your bills being paid? Then you're wealthier than you think. That to
That's
me
it.
is rich, somebody respecting you for being genuine, for being honest, for being kind and
That's it.
compassionate. That's wealth for me,
Mm,
not because in this world is built on a lot of fakeness, and you know how it is. So much so doing your branding and PR stuff as well. But did you ever Do you ever feel like you lost yourself at one point, and what brought you back if you did?
If I look more at my adulthood, more recently, I really lost myself when we moved from metro to, the city to the country.
Mm,
Yeah. We moved from Adelaide to Melbourne 2016, and I had at the time what I thought was the peak of my career, you know,
the peak
no
of your career.
kids, through myself. I'd been self-employed like for 4 years, and it's funny now, like I'm smiling because I know that that was not the peak of my career, but at the time, that's what I
Right.
understood. I had my HR business and I had contractors, and then I started doing community radio again. That's how I ended up in music. But 2016, 2017, I worked really hard because, my business before moving into music was HR management consulting. So I had contracts, for example, with Australia's Best Houses doing PR, but then I'd work with a business doing executive leadership coaching. Another business wanted help with recruitment. Another business wanted help with, HR management end to end, disciplinary stuff with employees. And to be fair, Zeus, I don't like telling people off, but I was good at it. So when I moved into music, it was that I
Understand.
wanted something to fill my cup and something that I enjoyed. And I've always loved music. I've always found music to be um, therapeutic, medicinal, like a way to pull me out of whatever sadness I've been feeling. So I thought, I'll go and do community
Mm-hmm.
radio again. I'd been doing community radio before in Adelaide. Then an artist invited me to manage them. And I thought, oh no, I love this, but I don't know what that means. And he said, don't worry, get started and you'll work it out. So,
You'll be fine.
that was 2016. That was in March. So I then, did like a 6-month internship where I threw myself completely in and learnt all the ins and outs. I went to all the industry events, Big Sound and the listening sessions, and met with the tastemakers from like the big Aussie stations. Then went to the ARIA Awards. I did all that stuff. And then the following year, I did journalism at the ARIAs. There were some events around Melbourne where
Wow.
I got to MC and be the MC for
Wow.
live music events. Yeah, that was fun.
How was that like?
I loved it. I loved being up on the mic, and, you know, what I love doing the most is amplifying the voices of all of you. So to be there, it was like such an honor to be there on stage as the person welcoming. But you know me, like I said, if I don't feel I'm being seen, I push back. I remember doing one at Wick
Mm,
Studios, and it was 3 artists and, one at a time getting up and doing their set. And at one point, the third one got up and the crowd was all talking. And I told them how it is. You listen to the
right.
other 2. Please give her the courtesy of being present. I don't care. I'm on stage.
Right.
If you're not going to give that person the respect and the attention they deserve, like you did the other 2, what's going on here? Like, put your phones away. Let's be present. Let's welcome her.
Yeah, like what are we
And
doing? Right.
people looked at me like, what is she on about? But, I'm there to advocate for all of you. So that was cool. But, we moved. This is when I lost myself. This is a long way of telling you. So I had
Mm,
my business, my HR business that was going well, and then my music business was really picking up. I'd gone to an event on Sydney Road. This was late 2017. It was a guitar exhibition, not the Guitar Expo at Caulfield Racecourse, but it was like a shop
on Sydney
where
Road.
they'd put guitars up on the wall like works of art, and there was a little placard for each one
Wow.
that described there were box guitars, slide guitars. They were the artwork. It wasn't pictures, it was real guitars. And there was a contact that I'd made, and he introduced me to this guy that was heading up the biggest blog platform at the time. So remember, this is like nearly 2 years of me going around and pushing, advocating for the community, doing 3 interviews a week on my website, then a couple of programs on Southern FM with interviewing artists live on air. He says to this guy, this is LED. I'd like to introduce her to you. she's going to be Australia's next Molly Meldrum. Now, I listen back to that now and I
Right.
go like, that was a massive compliment, but one I couldn't accept because I grew up watching Molly, and
Me too. Right.
you know what I'm talking about. Like he was part of the
I
reason that
know. I'm a natives kid myself, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
you know. So, then
Remember growing
he
up
went on
watching
to,
shows like
yeah,
It's a Knockout and Molly Meldrum. Yeah, go ahead.
you're now speaking my language again. And so then he says to me, you should be one of our national treasures. Look at all the things that you're doing. At that point, I realized that I was being seen for what I was doing, but I wasn't doing anything like I'm doing now. I just felt like it was lovely to, be given that space of, I guess, in some ways, gratitude for what I had done at that point. We moved then to regional Queensland a few months later. And just, I completely lost myself
Beautiful.
because
Wow.
I lost myself because I lost my businesses. Now, I was 35, 36 at the time, 36 at the time. All I'd known was work. I've told you, I started working when I was 13. I always had a number of jobs on the go. For me, the hardest thing was moving to a place where the technology, like there was a black hole, so a black spot. So where we were renting, this was on the coast of Wide Bay, Queensland. So you're 4 hours from Brisbane,
Queensland.
up near Bundaberg. So we're 4 hours from
Okay.
Brisbane, and the house we rented was on the waterfront, but was 2 houses away from where, Vodafone stopped. And so, all of a sudden I switched to Telstra and Telstra's still not working. So to explain how I say I lost a part of my identity
Right.
because we moved there for my husband's work. He's working all day, every day. I'm home without children, without any pets, in a place where I don't know anyone. We're not talking about, the greatest infrastructure where I'm having to drive like, what was it, 10 kilometers to the nearest petrol station or 17 the other direction. And I'm getting phone calls from my clients because I still had my HR business. The music scene in that locality was so flat. There was a lot of cover bands, and I typically don't work with covers. So I remember getting phone calls, clients ringing me, corporate clients saying, sorry, we can't do this anymore. Because I would fly around the country and sit in on meetings with business owners. And I'd flown to Adelaide to step through a performance management issue, and my flights got cancelled.
Wow.
And, when you're a consultant, your flights, your accommodation, and your fee all gets covered.
This
So
is
when
the
I'm getting phone
lifeblood.
calls saying like, we can't do this anymore, I then was also lecturing out at Uni SA, vocational subjects to like
You
penultimate.
were lecturing. Okay.
I was lecturing, yeah, like vocational.
Wow.
So, when we were in Adelaide, I would go in and I would run workshops on, this is how to be interviewed. This is how you write a resume. This is how you respond to a selection criteria, right? And then when we moved to Melbourne, I did this stuff over Skype. As soon as I moved up to Bundy, can't do it. Skype doesn't hold up anymore. It was pixelating, and so I lost those
Yeah,
opportunities.
infrastructure. Mm,
Infrastructure.
absolutely. I wanted
And I
to,
remember, yeah.
yeah, that's pretty profound. Yeah. Wow. You're bringing back so many memories. When I moved to Lebanon, there was hardly any infrastructure at all. I couldn't do work.
There you go.
I had to study
Yep.
on candlelight. Yeah, but go ahead. Of course.
Yeah. So I can remember it was August 2018. This one particular day, I'd made myself 8 shots of espresso, 8 shots of coffee, one after the other. And I
Wow.
was,
You would have
because
been wired.
I had this phone call, and I was like, this is it. This is the end of me. This is the end of everything, because I'd also done certifications in, executive leadership coaching. And I was like, I've spent all this money. I've done my Cert 4 in training assessment. I kind of put all my eggs in one basket. And I remember I just kept making coffee and
Absolutely.
sitting on the balcony and just tears and just crying, thinking, I should have never left Melbourne. I'd also had a job interview for Melbourne after we'd moved, and I couldn't move back for the second interview. Like, when you reach a point in your life and you think, I've worked so hard, how is this not getting easier?
It
And
should
where
be
do I
getting a
go
lot
now?
easier. I went through all and what do I do? I
I didn't really
definitely,
go through much at that point though. Like that wasn't really much. That was
oh, not much for you, but a lot from
no,
a lot of people, But no, I
yeah,
understand that really, because you got warrior blood in you. That's what I've noticed as well. So I wanted to talk to you about, this is a perfect segue to talk to you about awakening and healings.
yeah.
What was that your spiritual point, the moment you said, no more, I'm choosing myself, my family,
Hmm.
my sanity, and I wanted to move on
No,
to bigger and better things?
that's a big question. Was that the point where I said, no, I'm moving on to bigger things? No, I think that came after I had my son. Yeah,
Talk to me about that. What was
yeah,
that like?
yeah. So look, after I couldn't do XYZ with my professional skills, and I went and got licenses to start making Italian cookies and cakes from home. So I got
Yummy.
licensed, and I opened up a bakery, but we went down the path of IVF. So we had 15 years of unexplained infertility, and I thought, you know what, I can't provide any more from a financial sense. What other way do I know? It's to be a mum, and there's no guarantees, but we're very, very blessed. We had our son, and this was literally, it was March 2020. So we know that COVID is like about to hit. And I said to my husband, you know what, this isn't enough for me. And he's looked at me, what's she talking about? He's getting ready for work. And I'm just like, being a mum is not enough.
Absolutely.
This was a real spiritual awakening for me, Zeus, because what I realized was, I grew up with this whole idea of what a mum was meant to be, and this is what motherhood is like.
What instinct do you trust now that you once silenced just to survive?
What instinct? My own intuition, I didn't trust myself. There's been a lot of things that have happened over the years where I've gone, am I going crazy? Am I going mad? Am I imagining something? I'm like, no, no. I don't know if it's something that's come from becoming a mum. And, you have to listen to yourself a lot when it comes to your own children. The one thing that I listened to, which I never really did, and look, I'm still working on it. I'd be lying if I said that, I always listen to myself. There's this notion that people think that once you've gone through something, like you're healed, and you don't talk about it again, you don't relive it, you don't. It's a bit like this thing of, you know, trusting yourself. And there are times where I have imposter syndrome. Absolutely. I'd be lying if I said that I don't. But to
I
be
think
fair,
I
like,
think I think we all do.
I
Yes,
listen to
of
myself.
course.
Yeah, we all do. We all do. But yeah, I do. I'd listen to myself, and I haven't really been listening to myself as much over, the first 4 decades of my life. Yeah.
Now, looking back at your own work as well, coming up and being raised in an Italian family, Calabrese. By the way, my niece and nephew are half Calabrese as well. So my older brother went through the same thing as well, through the IVF. And yeah, my niece and nephew, shout out to my niece and nephew, James and Alana, half Calabrese. And growing up in that kind of household, there would have been a turning point for you. You were the eldest of
Two.
three, right?
Two.
Spiritually, how was that like having, because I know wouldn't have been easier. So it
Hanging,
wouldn't have
isn't
been
it?
easy. Like I always know that it said I don't know why. There's a lot of spiritual attacks been happening to me lately. But I think we can work it out on the flip side of things, on the post-production side of things. Yeah, I wanted to definitely give you your flowers and reach out to you in a sense where I understand where you're coming from. I think most of the audience understands where you come from as well. Couldn't be easier. Those who are the eldest of the families, like me, I was the youngest of three boys. So I know there was a lot of pressure and there was a lot of put on my older brother to make sure that we were okay when I had nothing to, he was kind of growing up himself. So what was the pressure like for you as the eldest, and how did that shape you spiritually?
Yeah. Spiritually, we're talking about the church, we're talking about
Yeah,
I guess
well,
I had
definitely.
like I had a lot of expectations placed on me. So, if I think about, we went through into things like our sacraments, and I can remember being about 16 and going, wanting to be a Eucharistic minister, which I was, mostly because I must have been younger than 16. I must have been 15. I've got to be honest with you and say, when you experience things, whether I guess you're a child or you're an adult, sometimes things are so um, challenging that you may choose not to remember. And, there were a lot of things
I
that I experienced that
understand
were
that.
not, it's just cultural stuff, expectations. And I
Yeah,
remember wanting,
and those
yeah,
expectations.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And so the thing of becoming a Eucharistic minister was because my nonna was too sick at times to go to church. So I would go up the front to the altar, not grab, but, accept the Eucharist. And then we would go past her house and I would take her the Eucharist. But it meant that, like at graduation, oh, well, you have to be the Eucharistic minister there as well. So I'm like year 12, I got my gown, I got my gloves, and I'm just like giving out. And people are saying, so beautiful. And I'm like, body of Christ, like I didn't do it to be told how lovely I looked. I did it because for me it was meaningful. Um, but now would I tell my kids to go and do that? Absolutely not. They want to do it. I think this is where I suppose we keep going back to a lot of what I wanted to do, I couldn't do because of controlled decisions that were made for me. Where now, as a mother, I want my children to be able to partake in that decision making, right? So, me being the eldest, like I think the eldest is always expected to do everything right, but it doesn't matter what I did right, it still wasn't necessarily seen as
It
right.
was always.
And
No, I
so,
understand that. Now, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
yeah,
It couldn't have been
yeah,
easy. That's why I think that's why I definitely appreciate my older brother more nowadays. So I look back and
yeah,
I see all the pressure, all the blame, all the stress that we put on him. He had to carry that burden, but he carried it silently. I think that's why I appreciate
yeah.
him a bit more. So I wanted to segue into another area of the conversation where it involves work, purpose, and calling. So
Mm,
your current role is as a music brand consultant, right? Working closely with independent and emerging artists. What does that actually look like for you day by day? And what do artists usually misunderstand about branding when they
mm.
first come to you?
Yes. Okay. So I am a music brand consultant and I'm an artist manager as well. So when I speak about my music brand consultant stuff, it is different to the management side of things. But look, what I do day to day, and this is the thing, is because I'm a mum and I've got three kids, two are at kindy, one's at school, and I'm the primary parent in the sense of, we live all as a family of five, but he works so many hours that it's, Christmas concert Tuesday, I'm going, it's that sort of thing where you have to shift and I have to be very adaptable and flexible. So what am I doing? I'm doing everything that includes distribution of music, pre-release activities and post-release. So I may have some artists that come to me and they jump on my roster and I do a whole host of things. It might be meta ads to push their pre-saves. It may be writing their Spotify pitch. It may be writing their press release, their bio, putting together an EPK, and then servicing post-release and getting it out to podcasts and radio stations and blogs and podcasts, everything that I can get them visibility. But the way that my day to day works is like tomorrow, drop my son off at where he's going, and then come home. I've got my daughters. Then I have help that comes. I have one person that can help me with my kids here. I suppose it's not a perk of living regional, but she's an angel herself. she'll come in and then I'll get like
Oh, bless
4.5
her.
hours where I can work. And so then I leave the girls with her. I go and do, all the mum things. And then I sit down
Mm.
finally. And then I go through and I'll, like I'm doing some strategies for next year, looking at how many albums and singles I've got to service and building out campaign dates. But then I pick my son up. We come home, I do the dinner shift, and then I'm working again tomorrow night at 8:00. That's typically, I don't have like set hours because I'm a mum first. So if something happens with the kids, I've got to drop everything. And my roster, my clients are super, super mindful and aware, and they are incredible because if something does go pear-shaped, I can say, I'm sorry. Today, all 3 kids are home. They've got whatever it is, and I'll do work when I can. And they're like, that's okay. Be with your kids, right?
Absolutely, that's amazing. That leads me beautifully into something I wanted to explore further. So you hosted and produced Business on the Border through Maestro Media.
I
What
did.
made you want to spotlight the business? Heartbeat of Albury Wodonga in long form way.
So, we moved like from Adelaide to Melbourne. Melbourne was huge. We go to Bundaberg, it's tiny. We come here, it's a little bit tiny. We were meant to be in Melbourne, by the way. When we were leaving Bundy, we were going to Melbourne, and then I got a call 2 months into my husband's 6-month notice period. You can't go there. We're going to have to send you to Albury Wodonga. We'd already said we'd had enough with regional, right? But the thing is, whenever we do anything, we do it as best as we can. So, like us coming here, well, then we made this our home. Here we are, right?
Right.
But the reality is that when we moved here, I reached out to the local chamber business Wodonga, and I'm a multidisciplinary business consultant. Like the title I use of music brand consultant is just to help musicians and creatives understand I help with the music branding. Okay. But I have other clients that I coach and lead with, business coaching, leadership coaching through Maestro Media. So I have 2 brands, and I wanted to do the podcast because I started podcasting in 2014 with a business podcast, funnily enough. And, moving to another regional area, I was like, how am I going to connect with people? I work by myself. I work online. All of my work is phone calls or emails. I don't get any interaction. No one was doing anything here about business on the border. So I thought, why don't I do it? And, it was at a time when we just moved here. 2024 is when I launched it. I did 1 season going into all different local businesses. It was fun. It's a lot of work.
Absolutely. God
But,
bless you.
do I have aspirations to do a 2nd season? No, I'm too busy. Something I learned a few years ago, Zeus, and only recently in the last 12 months I've come to put into place, which is this thing of being a generous person and having so many skills and giving of your time. And I realized in the last 12 months more so that some people will take advantage of that. The fact is, I don't, Maestro Media and Fine Tune PR are not hobbies, they're businesses. So, the podcast was a branding mechanism for my business at the time. The podcast was something I did when I had the time, but I was happy to do it because it was me investing in my own brand. I've had to pull away from other ventures where, the lines get blurred. And it even happens, I guess, you said, what is it that artists might come to me with and maybe have a misconception? Was I right in hearing that?
Misunderstanding about branding. Right.
I will get, and I'm sorry if I'm quoting anyone that's listening, but I'll get, I don't know what's happened, but like the song that I put out 3 weeks ago just hasn't had enough streams, right? And then I usually go down the path of, well, what did you do to promote it? And they're like, well, I released it. And then what? Where you've got tens of thousands, 40, 50, 60,000 songs going up on, say, Spotify every day. Why would anyone listen to your song? Someone did say to me, well, because it's good. That is something that you think of your music. Someone else might disagree. I don't know. So the biggest, I guess, misunderstanding from artists that I get is they think that, it will just happen. Like I'll build it and they'll come. I'll just create this song. No disrespect if you choose to produce it yourself or you pay a producer, but, significant growth comes from significant investment. So if you want your music to be heard and you want traction, find a solid producer, pay them money, and then also value the promotion as well.
Exactly.
When I say like they want to work with me and I go, well, send me your bio. Don't have one. But these are all things that I guess are red flags. You can't say that you can't. It's not fair. No one streamed my song if you haven't taken the time to tell people about your song. If you haven't text everyone in your phone. I've got a song coming out on Friday. Like they haven't done that.
Work. Right. They haven't done the behind the
Yeah.
scenes work. They haven't networked. They haven't gone to shows. They haven't supported other
No.
people, and they expect everyone to
No.
support them.
The iceberg, the image I've seen so many times of the iceberg where like top of the iceberg is a success. You don't see what's under the water. You don't see what's beneath, the water, which is all the things that you do, which is, doing a pre-save link and sending your press release, I'm not talking about doing an exclusive with a radio station. I'm just saying having all your ducks in a row. So when the song drops, you are doing stories on Instagram and you're not saying you need to be a content creator because that's something that I recently saw I heard it in a podcast where one of the big labels was saying they value more if you're a content creator versus an actual singer-songwriter.
That's interesting.
There's a lot
Right.
to do, but for self-managed artists, it's really hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it is really hard. Now, for the longest time, for the last 20 years, I've been in hip hop myself. I've been doing everything myself. Yeah, whether it's advertising, marketing, promotions, designing the graphics, doing everything myself. I haven't paid anyone outside to do it. I've been slowly climbing the ranks. The best I know how is to support others, to put your heart into it.
Good.
Like attending shows, and anyone can attest to this. Anyone who knows me personally, that is. Can attest to this. For the longest time, I've always loved supporting others, and I always knew that my genuine, authentic self actually doesn't expect anything in return. So when you do something for others and don't expect anything in return, that's when things happen for you, But I wanted to ask you, before Fine Tuned PR, you created Behind the Music with LED to highlight indie artist stories. What gap were you trying to fill in the Australian music media?
Okay, so in 2016, I created this trilogy of products, like literally got a notebook. When I started on this music journey, I was like, what would I like? What's on my bucket list, my wish list? And I wrote 3 things down, right? And one was Behind the Music with LED, the podcast, and one was then Behind the Music with LED, the YouTube series, completely different. I'm not talking about like the visual of, because remember in the podcast that I did, when I launched it, my son was 4 months old and like I'm holding him and I'm rocking him to sleep while I'm doing an interview with G-Man and the Powerhouse. That was the first interview that I did. Then when I went on to do the internet radio station, Oz Now Radio, those were the 3 products. So the reason I did it is because, well, it's a couple of reasons. One, I had all these skills and all these connections in music that while I was in Bundaberg, I just couldn't do anything with them. So I thought, why don't I give them a platform to voice their story? Let's go behind the music with them. The second thing was, like I mentioned, being a mum wasn't enough. I needed my own identity. So it gave me something to feel like I was being seen and I was also of help to others. Because again, COVID, couldn't see people in person. You most certainly couldn't see people and not over there. And the third reason was I was just hoping and praying that we would move back to Melbourne. Like, as ridiculous as it sounds, we had a Sonos system through the house and I would put it on Melbourne radio and I would hear all the
Right.
ding, ding, dings that would happen with the COVID announcements or what have you, because,
Right, I
there
remember those.
was that signature doorbell that I can remember. I just was trying to manifest a life back in Melbourne. So for me, it was like, if I do these things, then one day when we move, like I'll have references, for want of a better word, like demonstrated history that I'm still in the scene and I'm still doing great things with others and that story will continue. That was my hope. and then I come, I suppose, the flip side of it where, my Instagram was fished. So those three products, Zeus, I built them attached to the LED official Instagram. I got fished in October 2022 and went, oh, what do I do now? Those are all attached. I had the domain, I had the email address, I had everything aligned to that. And at that point, we had just moved to Albury Wodonga. And I was like, is it the universe telling me you did what you did and you did a great job, but you don't need that anymore. You can now rebuild yourself, recreate, reinvent. And that's what I did. I had to.
So you launched it while, you were demanding season of motherhood. What did that prove to you about endurance and purpose, really?
When I was in hospital having my daughters, waiting to have my daughters, because that was quite a challenge the whole pregnancy. I had a lot of specialists around me, and one was the psychologist that was trying to just keep my mental health afloat, because I was in hospital on bed rest for like 12 weeks, waiting for the girls to see whether they come through. And she said to me, if you were on a plane and, the oxygen mask dropped, what would you do first? I said, well, I would pass them to my children. And she said, no, you need to put yours on first and then the children. So she said, you think about that when you do eventually. Let's hope you get to that point where the girls are born, they're safe, you go home. She said, you always need to think about ways that you can fill your cup. And so that's where I guess is the answer to what you've just asked me.
Beautiful.
Doing the
appreciate
mum
that.
stuff, that's great. But I mean, the kids then also, I wanted them to know and to feel like they can do anything as well. You've seen the Barbie movie, whether you like it or whether you don't. The premise that Barbie can do anything, that is what I've worked to as a mother is anything the kids want to do, they put their mind to it, they can do it. And I need to be that example for them.
Lead by example, exactly.
So I'm living by example. I give them all the hugs and kisses and everything that they need. But then mum also needs to have her time. Because, I don't want it to be they get to like 18, 19, 20, they leave and they're asking themselves like, but what's going to happen to mum? I want them to see that,
Absolutely, and God bless you. That's the hope of any parents for wanting our kids to see us as well. It is what it is. Some people are destined for greatness. Some people build their way up to greatness. It's all about perception, really. So you're
it is.
deeply involved in amplifying Australian music. Specifically, what
Yes.
do you do? So what do you think artists here need to do differently to build longevity rather than chase moments?
Yeah, I think a lot can be learned from what I'm also doing, in managing Michael Cristiano. There's the only artist that I exclusively manage. I can only have one favorite, but I can only do what needs to be done properly, I believe, as a manager of one artist. I can't be managing 5 or 6. I just wouldn't do it right. When I look at and his situation is quite unique. But as I've said to many, as someone that has decades of accolades and accomplishments, he's also breaking through a market because, he's born in Australia, but Italian background, releasing songs in Italian and Spanish, and still kicking goals. We don't focus.
I
I
was
don't
going to
focus
ask you
on.
about that.
Yeah. I see there's a very similar pathway for what we're achieving as for any other emerging artist. You're trying to cut through the noise, and we're all trying to do the same things. What I would encourage artists not to do is, well, don't focus on the numbers. I think there's this
Don't focus on the
misconception that,
numbers. I
yeah,
love
it's
that.
always about the numbers, like if I think back to when my Instagram was fished, I had just over 6,000 followers, right? And I was like, I've worked on this since, 2015, and how am I going to get those numbers back? But all you need is a trusted audience. an audience that truly loves what you do, it's not about having hundreds of thousands of people, because if those people love what you do, and let's say, Zeus, you had
Exactly.
10 super fans, and they then catch up with their friends and they're like, oh, what have you been listening to lately? Or people do talk about music. Oh, you should check out Zeus the Prophet, and then they buy one of your t-shirts, and next thing you know, like, that's a cool t-shirt. Like, you got to think of harnessing relationships, really meaningful relationships. I'm not talking about blowing smoke. Really meaningful
I know
connections,
what you
right?
mean,
Because
for
there's a
sure.
lot of smoke and mirrors in this industry, right?
Hard, like I've been in this industry for the last 20 years, and I know how difficult it is to navigate through the sea of fake people, only to pluck out a few genuine people who ride alongside you still to this day. But I
It's
wanted to
so
go back to
unregulated too.
yeah, well, we'll touch on that a bit um a bit later as well. But I wanted to bring you back to something in regards to your fine-tuned PR.
Mm.
So your company has become a trusted name behind the scenes in the industry now. What was the original problem that you saw that made you realize that this needs to exist?
Well, that's good. Yeah, the problem I saw was, again, to go back to that feeling of when you're self-managed. I've heard it a lot over the years, even back in 2016, 17, where I do an interview and people would say, they'd be off air and their song would be playing and we'd just be having a bit of banter, and I'm distracted. I'm looking through the catalog trying to find something to cue next. And I'm like, so how did everything go on Friday when you released your song? And they're like, yeah, like it just felt like kind of empty. I released the song and no one reached out and said, like, text me and said, congratulations. And then, like, I was like, what do I do now? What do I do now with my music? Like, I've ingested it on AMRAP and it's up on Spotify, but I don't know what to do. And it felt really empty. I kept hearing it was empty, and then that word empty to me translated to loneliness. And what could I do to cheer someone on and virtually hold their hand? And a lot of the people that I've worked with these past couple of years have said what they love when they release a song is they know that it's not them by themselves. They've got someone else there that is, you know, working on the day to promote their music, that
Helping them.
is helping them, helping them. So for me, it was that feeling of creating a connection. But I also was told years ago that, as a self managed artist, they can go and get their own label, right? Something I don't particularly like, which is moving away from this conversation of, is where you've got like people pretending something that they're not. And this idea of, if I were an artist and I got my own label and I then have two Instagram accounts and my label is saying, look at LED, she just released a song, how cool. And then I go and comment on my own label and I say, oh my goodness, thank you so much, guys. Same person.
Mm, mm.
And it was a few years ago that someone came to me and said, I'm doing this. I am flying under the mask of my own label. And I would much prefer that someone else that is trusted and respected gave me the seal of approval of being my cheerleader. I
Wow.
mean, this goes way back to when I started in the music business, and that has always stuck in
I,
my
I
head.
love how you articulated that. That's very grounding. It gives us a base to build on. Like for sure, it's a great reflection. So, what's the one misconception that people have about PR that fine-tuned PR intentionally does different?
What I do different, is that what you want to know? What I do different to other PR? Is that the question? Yeah.
Yeah, because
Feedback
you're
I
definitely
get is,
unique. You're in your own
yeah,
realm, type of thing.
thank you. I can only go by the feedback that's given to me by others that approach me to work with them. Because I don't go looking. Like, I've got to be honest and say, I swim in my own lane and I'm so focused on what's around me. Sure, I go beyond the field when I'm working with my roster and looking at creative strategies for them, but I don't go onto websites of others that may provide similar services. What I hear
I
is
love
that
that answer.
I don't have my blinkers on per se, but I'm just swimming in my own lane, focused on my own goals. Again, I'd be too easily distracted if I started looking sideways. What I do differently, Zeus, is first of all, I don't just do the PR. So I've had some speak with me and then I do a deep dive and I'm like, well, okay, can I just share with you? And I'm very black and white. Like I don't do any fluff. I don't candy coat anything. I want to work efficiently and honestly and transparently. And I'm probably too honest. I'm probably more honest than I need to be. But when I'm looking at this person's website and I said to them, okay, so just so you know, the link to your Spotify is broken on your website. And that person says, oh, thank you. I wonder why I wasn't told that by my publicist. When I'm working, I'm not looking just at the press release and then how many radio stations can I push it out to. I do everything from YouTube optimization of videos. I write the bios for Spotify. I do all the updates for social media bios. If you think of like the sky's the limit, but for me, doing, for example, a press release and a bio and then pushing that out to radio is one piece in the puzzle because you've got all these other platforms that you need to cater to as well. And just because you may have chosen CD Baby and you're distributing or you ingest the song and it's going out to all the different stores, right?
Or DistroKid, yeah,
Or
exactly.
DistroKid or GyroStream or TuneCore. Like once you've ingested the track, you then have to work to get the pre-save link. You then have to hustle the pre-save link to get your pre-saves up. You have to write a Spotify pitch. This is the thing is when people think of promotion, they think of paying someone to get streams. People don't pay me to get streams. They pay me for the strategy that promotes their visibility. There's two different things. The other thing that I've been given
organically.
feedback. It does happen organically. Everything I don't encourage and I don't buy followers. There is no smoke and mirrors. It is exactly what it is. Again, you buy followers. None of them are going to come back and like your post. They're not going to share your post. They're not going to listen to your music. And then you land in the space of particularly with platforms like Spotify. And I keep mentioning Spotify, but as an example, then you end up on a botted playlist, right? So I also offer that service where I have botted detection turned on for my roster. I got a message the other day that an artist had landed on the bottom playlist and bang, I was straight on to resolving it. The artist doesn't have to panic. I take that peace of mind from them. But the other thing is when I'm working with you, I'm in communication with you. So I have heard a lot of complaints back in 2022. Artists had come to me, they said, we want quotes for 2023. That's cool. But we just want you to know this is what we experienced. So they'd gone through other agencies and there were no phone calls at all. So there have been some that have dropped, a significant amount of money and it's just like, here's the invoice and sorry, we couldn't do anything for you, or this is what we'll provide you with. But what they're being provided with is like AI templates generated as a form of support where everything I do is custom, handwritten. It's old school, like it's retro for want of a better word. It's, the service I provide is, well, yeah. And I like to pride myself on offering a service that is similar to what labels used to offer because, labels are not really doing anything nowadays. Once you've got your artwork and the track and you've got your metadata on the track, you need then a publicist. You need someone to promote.
So I'm really glad you said that, sis, and it sets it up for the next part of the conversation perfectly. Because I was just about to ask you regarding Under the Radar, where Melbourne's indie voices meet off stage. Now, for those who don't know, we actually first met, through Under the Radar at the Polybar on Brunswick Street, It's quite a space, where you champion artists before the spotlight. That environment was an invitation only. It was intimate, intentional. So what do you think, Elena, what do you think those kinds of rooms matter so much for people, for artists and industry people who are still finding their voice?
It matters because it harnesses organic conversation and connection. Again, it comes back to why I do what I do. It's to create connection. And,
absolutely,
if you're going to amplify someone's voice, the first thing you can do is connect them to someone else that is also walking the same road. So that was the first event. There's another that will be held 28th of March. I'll be doing again at
March, I
Polybar.
think.
That'll be in collaboration with Tag, the Alternative Gig Guide, and also with Donkey Man Studios. I'm very excited for that as well.
Shout
Not
out to
publicly
Simon,
announced.
Donkey Man Studios. Yeah, well,
That hasn't been publicly
I
announced yet, so there's an
understand.
exclusive
I
for you.
understand.
But the thing for me was like I've been to so many events and even like big sound, and there's always someone on stage, and it's hard to then sit or stand and have a conversation with someone when you've got distractions where your attention, like, should I be watching the person on stage? Should I be talking with the person next to me? Or, oh, here comes some food. What do I do with the food? I mean, I've been in all different types of events, and I've just thought, take it back old school. So I do a lot of retro stuff, you know. I guess I'm stuck in the
That's
80s, but I like the thing
That's
of,
I love the 80s. I grew up in the 80s. That's my favorite time, I think personally, everyone can have their own opinions, but I think some of the best music came out in the late 80s, early 90s. Some of the best movies came out, like it was a time for me when it was carefree. I don't know exactly what you're talking about. That's why that
yeah,
was such a unique perspective. That's why it matters so much. It was
it
different.
was
It was
different.
such a great time. So
And
alongside consulting, sis, you're also involved in exclusive artist management, with Michael Cristiano.
yeah,
I wanted to ask you, what did you recognize in him early on that made you commit
wow.
beyond the numbers, beyond the momentum? What was it?
Yeah, well, this is the funny thing, if you've got time, because
Of course, take your
how
time,
we
sis.
came
No
to how
rush.
we came to cross paths in itself was I still stop and think about it and think, how am I so lucky? Like, honestly. So what happened was I was on Instagram one day, it was July last year, and I saw this video come up, and it was all in Italian, and this guy's in black and white, and he's dressed super cool, and he's like so passionate in the song, and he's emotional, and there's this guitar, and I was like, this is cool. This is cool. And so I commented, I said, congratulations. Like, if you ever need any help with your PR, let me know. I think I put interviews because I wrote Italian. And then I realized that he was connected to Sue Ellen Cusack, who I also work with. So one day, Sue Ellen and I having a chat. I said, by the way, Michael's your producer. She's like, yeah, yeah. I said, well, do you think you could mention to him that I've commented on his Instagram, but he hasn't replied? Like, he must be so busy. At this point,
Right.
Suze, I knew nothing about Michael, just that he was releasing Italian songs. And then the next one came out, and I was like, again, I was kind of like a fangirl going like, hey, I'm over here.
Hello.
And then one day, like, Sue Ellen rings me and she says, I'm just saying, that I gave Michael your number, he's going to call soon. And I was like, okay, cool. Gang like that, he rings. So that was July, then it was like early August. I get this phone call, and I remember him saying straight off the bat, like, oh, I won't keep you too long. I know you're probably really busy. And I was like, this guy's really considerate of me, not just himself. And then the more we talked, and I'm like, we're talking about what I could do to help him. And I said, so what are you doing during the day? Like, what's your daily grind? And he goes, oh no, this music. I was like, okay. All right, so we'll touch base tomorrow. Anyway, I went home that night and I put his name into the TV. My goodness, my poor husband, he was sitting at the table behind me, and I'm going, oh my God. Oh my God. Like, because I didn't realize who he was or how he was, because this is the thing, a big deciding factor. Okay. Our cultural heritage is matched, but our energy, our work ethic, we complement each other in ways that make the whole experience of working together an absolute joy. So, in that situation where then I went, wow, he also, he's so different to anyone I work with, because he not only writes the lyrics, he performs the vocals, he does all the arrangement, the composition, he does all the instruments, he performs all the instruments. Like, now
Does
he's working on his
everything.
second album. Oh man, I can't tell you what's going to happen, but I've had a sneaky listen. My goodness, to the point where I have to catch myself, because I'm starting to sing what I've heard in my head, and then I have to be careful I don't sing it out loud. Yeah. I'll just let my eyes do the talking for the next album. But he does everything. Then he produces it himself. But this is not someone that, again, I'm not
Wow.
being dismissive of anyone who self-produces, but he's done the
No, not at
studies
all.
and he's then produced for like, he's the musical director and producer for The Seekers. He's worked with Russell Morris. He's, Mike Brady. There's so many that he's worked with that are icons,
That's
and he
so
is an icon
insightful.
himself.
Wow.
So to work with him is like, yeah, it's huge.
So as a manager, when do you push an artist and when do you protect him from the industry?
Yeah. Wow. I guess protection, protection comes in. Sorry, I kind of laugh. Protection definitely comes in
No, you're okay.
when,
No, of course, because I think it's very important for a manager to protect their artists as well from some aspects of the industry that they might not see or but they not know from working for years behind the scenes. You can see
yeah.
everything a mile away before it comes to the artist.
Well, this is the
You
funny
know,
thing, Zeus,
yeah,
because remembering, in terms of experience in the business, Michael is way more experienced than I am. So, every day I wake up and I go, wow, this is incredible that he's entrusted me with this role of support, protection. The reason I giggled is the fan mail that is coming in.
oh
And,
wow,
like I do get lots and lots of emails and messages through the socials where there are super fans that, Michael, when are you going to perform? When can I come and see you? And I wish you a good day. And, I have to keep him on track. And what he's on track with at the moment is his second album. He's got a very big performance next year in March at Un Cuore Italiano in Melbourne. And so, like there's big things that are in the pipeline. And so then the protection is me showing my absolute gratitude because I am like blown away. I mean, I love seeing that he gets support. I love all the reviews that come through too.
yeah, of course,
But
of
I have
course.
to remind people that I will let him know, and I do. Every day he gets an update. This person from this place has sent through a message. They listen to this song. They say it's their favorite. He gets everything, but he is not accessible. I'm the one that is like, I'm like what would you call? I'm not the gatekeeper, but I have to give him the creative freedom to do what he does best. And if he was going to be that accessible to the public, like he wouldn't be getting this next album out there.
I love the way you described that. Yeah. What has working with Michael taught you about your own leadership style?
Yeah, I've got to trust myself more. I've got to trust myself more. I'm the type of leader that if I don't know the answer, I will go out there and bloody well learn what I need to learn to bring things to life. But then I know when I'm out of my depth as well. So that's the other thing is if there's something where I go like I'm totally out of my depth, I'm not going to fake it till I make it. I've said it already. I don't like the whole smoke and mirrors. I can't do that myself.
You're
But
very
leadership,
grounded.
thank you. And that's the other thing is like I try where I can to put myself in his shoes to try and understand, what are you working on at the moment? What can I do to help you with that? If there's something you think I can do, because again, I'm that tier of support, and he knows he can ask for that support when he needs. And the only challenge, I guess, is that I'm here and he's there. I'd love to be in Melbourne, seeing him lay down, whatever instruments, vocals, whatever he's doing for this next album, but I can't be. I'm 4 hours away. That sucks,
Understand. So let's transition into something. Um, I would say something more profound as well. Let's talk motherhood and
Oh,
identity. You know,
mm,
and that was profound to me as well. How you expressed your respect for Michael as well. Shout outs to Michael Cristiano. But yeah, I definitely wanted to talk about motherhood and identity a little bit,
yeah.
just for my audience so they understand where you're coming from that perspective. So how did motherhood sharpen your intuition as a strategist rather than soften it?
If anything, I guess it's reminded me of how much I value honesty and transparency. And as a strategist, how I can work more efficiently. Absolutely. If I know that I've only got 3 hours tomorrow to do work and I've got commitments that I've made, what it's taught me as well is, about scheduling, knowing what is my upper limit and what can I do to deliver because I like to work to the Amex promise,
Right.
under promise, over deliver. So there's,
Okay. I love that.
there's,
That's kind of how I work as well, right?
yeah, it was a bit like if, no expectations means no disappointment, right? I
That's
think
how
it's a
I've
nice
always
way.
operated.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, for me, I guess as a strategist, being a mum, it's a case of, whatever time I have to max out the efficiency of the time that I've got to work with. And,
All right.
takes
Beautiful.
a lot of
Well,
focus.
let me take us one step closer then. So what version of success would you refuse today, even if it paid you more and moved faster?
What version of success would I refuse if it paid me more and moved faster?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without having to, with keeping your integrity intact, keeping your honor, your morals, your pride, all
Oh,
these
look, I
kind
had
of
this
things,
happen way back when I was in HR. I was offered to, help a business. It was a $500,000 contract. It was a big contract, but I found my ethical barometer was not in line with that of the business owners. And so I didn't accept it. What would I be offered? I wouldn't say radio because radio doesn't pay very much. I'm just trying to think of what would I be offered in this industry? I don't know. Even if someone came to me and just wanted to throw, hundreds of thousands of dollars at me to manage them, like, no, I don't do this for the money. I do need some sort of financial exchange. The energy for me is huge, right? That
Of course.
energy
And your
exchange.
time is the most precious commodity in the universe as
Yeah.
well. That there has to be
But
an
this is,
exchange there,
I never
Sometimes
take
it's necessary.
anyone on. I never take anyone on based on the money they're throwing at me. I have to like their music. I have to like their energy. If it's not easy, I won't accept it.
Yeah, I think that's why
So
we're connected so well. That's why
yeah,
I'm so honored for you to be on this podcast tonight, like,
thank you.
yeah, just talking to my wife about it all week, and she's so wrapped, and I'm so excited as well. Like, it's such a great honor as well. But in
Thank you.
regards to motherhood, you stepped into an incredibly compressed season of motherhood, becoming responsible for 3 young children in a
Mm,
very short period of time. So how did that intensity reshape everything?
yeah, totally. Totally reshaped everything, Zeus. We thought we'd do one extra round of IVF just for one more sibling for our son. And then it was the last round I could do, and then it split, and then I got twins. um, you know,
God
and
bless them.
then
God bless your
God
family.
bless them, yeah. And then so yeah, I had 3 kids under 2 when I brought the girls home. What did it do? It made me refocus my priorities, absolutely. And I had to focus and go, well, there was a period of time where all I did was just focus on the kids. But then it got to the point where I went, well, I have to allow them to be them, their little selves, so they can grow into bigger versions of themselves where they don't feel like I'm, you know, mothering them or
Right. Right.
influencing them to be what I want them to be. And,
Hmm? I
what it
understand that.
shifted for me was, I guess, the thoughts that I had about what a mother should be and the inner conflicts that I had about what I was taught a mother should be and what I wanted to be as a mother is a lot of that still happens too, you know. But living regional, like I'm very lucky for my husband that he's provided whatever support he can. But, realistically, a lot of it has been where if I can outsource something I do to be able to make my role as a mother, what's the word? More profound. If I'm spending time, for example, I outsource ironing, right?
That's fine. You
If it
need to
means that
sometimes.
sometimes you do, but looking at, and he does say to me all the time, like, look at what needs to be delegated or outsourced, because he knows how important it is to me that I have my work. Work for me is
Of course.
refilling my cup, and then when I'm with the kids, then technically it should translate to me being more balanced. It's not always like that. They're also
That's
close in
such as
age,
life. such as life. I took the kids to Brighton Beach yesterday as well, and then I came back home. Had a mountain of things to do. I
Yeah.
love helping my wife a lot as well, and like I'm not afraid to admit it. I definitely love to be there for her. Like she's been there for me all the time. She's my rock. She's my everything, my best friend. Whenever she's not feeling good, I'll definitely ask her, is there anything I can help with? Is there anything that, like I'll pick up the slack when it's needed as well. Cause I think that's what a real man does, like most men won't admit this, but I'll admit this on the Zeus podcast, where we keep it real and authentic. A real man helps his wife out. So to all you men out there as well who think that's the woman's job, let her deal with it. Nah, who helps your wife when she's not feeling good? You know what I mean? That's your job. You know what I mean? That's what you need to understand is that
Mm.
motherhood, especially for those of us who have kids, a mother's job is one of the hardest jobs in the world. So when we
Pretty
pick up the
hard.
slack, we actually make them feel a lot better about continuing and moving forward as well. So yeah, definitely. I wanted to um, you know, salute you, my dear. It can't be easy at all to juggle three
Pretty
kids
hard.
and
Mm.
multiple businesses as well. But I want to ask, where does God meet you in your life right now?
Through my son a lot. My son talks a lot about God and talks a lot, and whether it's because he's at, school now and they talk a lot about how God loves you. And yeah, there are times where I think I'd like to go back but I feel like I don't need to sit in the church to sit with God. I can
Yeah,
sit,
I agree. I agree.
this is where I guess as a Catholic, I think sometimes, this is where I'm a little bit of a rebel in that I do also enjoy some of the Buddhist teachings. I think of, technically, if I am, you know, a woman of God, then God's with me every day, everywhere that I am. I don't need to
Exactly
go to a
right.
church. I don't need to, but, he talks a lot to me about his experiences and what what he understands, and it's sweet, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
conversations that I haven't had in a long time.
That's what I want to touch on, and
Mm,
stuff that most people don't talk about as well is, like what you just said. I mean, there's some things in the Bible, I won't get too controversial here, but there's some
mm.
things in the Bible that don't teach you about spirituality. And
Yes, right.
that's exactly what you just said in regards to going to church. You don't have to go to church to pray to God
Mm,
or to pray to Jesus. Even though I'm a big believer in God and Jesus, but I believe He's everywhere. And actually, God is within us. If you read the Bible correctly, God is within you, which
mm.
means that, and it's funny, I was watching something recently where they filmed for the first time the point of inception where the embryo meets an egg. So the sperm meets the embryo and there's a flash of light, and that's the light of God to me,
Well,
and
it's the
that's
same
why I
thing with
say God is within you. Mm.
you made me think of when I had like both of the embryos transferred when I had IVF. And when my son was transferred, I saw on the ultrasound because they use ultrasound for mine, and I was by myself. I remember the specialist saying, you can take a video, show your husband because he couldn't be there. So, I'm there having this transfer, it's super emotional, there's this thing of light on the screen, like this zap of light. Well, when my girls were
Sure.
transferred, again, it was one embryo, but this zap of light was like, and I knew it was like my last egg. I had one egg, it was my last egg, and that egg then became the embryo that then I don't know whether it was like splitting as it was transferred, but I've got the video somewhere. I remember again, my husband couldn't be with me for that transfer either. And I remember showing him the video going, the light was massive. And I've read that too, what you've just said. Yeah, it's
I
cool.
understand. I understand. So, what part of the industry feels spiritually misaligned to you, even if it's considered normal?
I think lack of boundaries, lack of boundaries. This expectation that I will be online all the time. You know what I mean? Like people, I know I'm in a service industry, but like a few weeks back, I got this. Instagram message 8:30, 9 o'clock on a Saturday night. If I'm working on a Saturday night, I'm working for Michael. I'm not working for anyone else. So, I'm getting this distraction. I open it. I'm like, you can do a thing now called scheduling. You can schedule emails. You can schedule text messages. I do that all the time.
Especially with the advancement of AI as well.
Yeah, but I think there's this perception, misunderstanding that because music is a creative industry, that I will listen to voice messages any time of the day or night, but I think it's just, it's not an abuse of, it's not a form of abuse. It's just a lack of boundaries, lack of respect, I guess. And this is the thing, it's great that I'm trusted by so many, but, you know, outside of hours, I'm typically with my kids.
Much, I understand. Speaking
I'm
of
not,
your
I'm not,
kids,
I'm not a robot.
and none of us are, we all need to have that me time, have that
No.
going back to being normal again, because life is so crazy already.
Yeah.
But that's speaking of children. If your kids, watch this episode 10 or 15 years from now, what do you hope they hear between the lines about who their mum really is?
Yeah. I hope when they listen to this, what they hear is with absolute confidence, mum has been trying to build a future with dad that allows them to choose their own path, knowing that wherever that path takes them, we're proud of them, knowing that we love them, knowing that we work hard. That's for sure, but we want them to learn from what we've learned from as well. And, I hope with time that they'll look back and they'll go, we got the love that we needed, we got the examples of leadership that we needed.
Right.
They've got the house, they've got the food on the table, but that they've got some role models that they can look at and feel safe with and trust and know that they can dig within themselves and find their own journey.
Amen
Imagine
to
how
that.
boring this world would be if we all were the same.
Too boring. Too boring. I wouldn't want to live in a world if everybody was the same. That's why I love uniqueness. That's why I love individuality. Of course, that's why I
Yeah.
vibe. That's why I can, be among any room and just vibe off the light workers, so to speak,
Yeah.
But I want to ask you, what would you tell a woman who is living the pain that you once lived to help them get out of course?
Hmm. Keep going. Keep going. Don't allow whatever's holding you back to stop you from achieving whatever greatness you aspire to achieve. Society has this stigma around, where a mother should sit, I feel. There are hashtags, hash mumpreneur. I don't use them. I'm a solopreneur. I'm one person working towards greatness. I'm not going to allow my role as a mother to define me. Keep going, keep believing that you've got what
Keep
it takes
going.
because, this is the thing is people around you will tell you you can't do that. You'll never be able to achieve that. Who would want you to do that? What will people
That's
think? What will people
exactly right.
say? I've grown up with
Exactly
all of
right.
those statements.
Many people confuse urgency with purpose. They forget, visibility is with calling and exhaustion is with devotion. Spirituality, sustainability isn't about doing more or being seen more.
No,
It's about
no, and
remaining
it's
aligned when no one's watching, when applause fades away, when progress feels a bit slow. Artists often think they must constantly give, perform, prove, and then the spirit doesn't survive on output alone, it survives on rest. Like you were saying,
yeah,
gotta give time to yourself as well. Rest on truth, on obedience to timing when the timing's right as well. And
yeah.
so what do you want people to understand about the real you?
Hmm. The real me, the real me in this role that I have with Fine Tune PR, you know, I practice what I preach. If I say that I exist to amplify voices, your voice, and to empower you and help you feel like you're on the right path. If you're not on the right path, I'll tell you. And I don't believe you're on the right path. I want people to know that I'm what you see
Honesty.
is what you get. What you see is what you get, you know? And because of, I guess, the HR background, I also advocate and want to, in many ways, remove these situations where people were taken advantage of. Maybe the kindness that they
Mm,
extend is over taken too much of. But I mean, I can only advocate for myself, right? But I can also empower others to advocate for themselves. So, you know, I think I say with my hand on my heart, I just want people to know that what you see is what you get. If I say it
thank
to
you.
you, I would say it on the front of a newspaper. You know what I mean? I'm not saying one thing to
Same,
you, Zeus,
same
as
here.
something.
Oh, of
It's
course not.
just,
I
yeah,
understand,
yeah.
I understand that. Thank you for your brutal honesty. I think that's what
Thank
you
you.
bring to the table most. To me,
You
that
ask
is,
really good
your
questions,
honesty,
though.
your
You ask
integrity.
like,
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just trying to get into a different space, different mindset as well. I
I
think
think I'll still be asking
a lot
myself
of
these questions.
so. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your heart and your soul and what you
Thank
bring
you.
and how you help people with all your might and everything that you have. I don't want it to seem like, you're not appreciated. I want to be the first to
No,
tell you, if you haven't heard this today, I appreciate you so much.
thank you.
Like you're a person, you're a very rare person in this world, not let alone this industry. A
Thank
very
you.
rare person. I wanted to give you your flowers today and tell you that you are appreciated so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Zeus.
Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your courage, you know, and thank you for your heart tonight. It really means so much to me. Your story isn't just a story, it's a reminder that God can turn pain into triumph and purpose into a lifelong mission filled with the wisdom. It's what you bring to the
Mm,
table. Your voice matters, your journey matters to me and to many others like me as well. The strength
thank
that you
you.
carry will lift others walking through the darkness you rose out of. Eleanor? You are
Thank
seen,
you.
you are heard, and you are valued.
And I also want to say this, thank you not only for seeing me for who I am, but also, I mean, I listened to your interview with Labsy, and I want to thank you for what you're also creating, which is a platform to also amplify the real voice, you know, the truth that exists that I guess we don't get to speak about, we don't get to share. Thank you.
Well, we do now. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we do.
God bless
That's
you
why you
so
created
much.
it.
I'm so proud of it, and I'm so proud of you too, and that for what you're doing for other artists.
Thank you.
So, if you could leave one sentence of encouragement, sis, for the person listening who's doubting their path right now, what would you say?
I would have to say, if you're doubting where you're currently traveling, if you're going in the right direction, what's motivating you to go down that path? Look at your motivation. Is that motivation an inner motivation, or is that a motivation that's coming from somewhere else? Is it coming from a third party? Don't force if it doesn't feel right, don't force it.
All right, chosen ones, this has been the Zeus Podcast. Thank you so much for sitting with us in truth, in presence, and in the kind of conversation that doesn't need to be rushed or performed, but revealed with respect. These are
Thank
the
you,
stories
Zeus.
that matter, the ones built in quiet rooms, shaped behind the scenes, and carried with integrity long before they're ever seen. As you go back into your week, guys, stay in truth, even when it costs you. Stay encouraged, like what Elena told you tonight. When the road narrows, stay grounded in who God has called you to be. Please, and stay in faith. When the outcome is yet to be visible, may what you heard today strengthen you, steady you, and remind you that endurance is not weakness, it's wisdom in motion. God bless you and keep you safe, chosen ones. Until the next time, this is the Zeus Podcast. God bless you, Eleanor. Good night.